Well, hello, Gina.
Hi, Steve.
All right, let me
I
make
don't know if I can come
Oh,
but
that's fine.
I'm here today.
I appreciate that. Let me make sure I've got my recording going. I think set for auto.
I,
All right,
I think you do.
nice. So let's get started. Welcome everyone to the weekly Mr. Wizard's workshop. The focus this week is on prioritization, setting priorities, and importance of that effort, and how to think about and manage. So, as a business coach, one of the promises or commitments I make to my clients is to help them or support them in doubling their productivity. And one of the really important tools in my tool chest to do that, teaching them and working with them on prioritization and some of the pitfalls. And as I recently retired from a 44-year career in information technology. The last 12 years was primarily as a project manager, scrum master, using agile scrum. So if you're running a 2-week project for where you have an obligation to deliver a working set of new functionality, you really, really need to be on top of prioritization. So I wanted to, let me see if you camera right. So I drew on my little post-it here. Can you see this reasonably well? And
Uh, no, not really.
all right, so I'll read it off and kind of,
Yeah.
this is why I'm experimenting with using a little post-it for a session. So the basic definition of prioritization is to organize things so that the most important thing is done or dealt with first. That's surprising, a definition. This box here is called the Eisenhower Box, Dwight D. Eisenhower. Two in the United States, but I think more important from the point of view of his perspective on things, 5-star general during World War II, commander for all of the forces in Europe. Things could be urgent or not urgent. Something could be important or not important. Again, it's a quote from Eisenhower. He said, what is important is seldom urgent. What is urgent is seldom important. So if something is important and urgent, then basically do it, right? Give it a deadline. And the way to think about that is ask yourself, for this goal or this thing, what is the very next physical action I need to take to make progress on that? And that is your highest priority task, and you want to give it a realistic but specific, not urgent but important. Then you need to decide. That is, schedule a time, do it. Because if it's something that's important but it's not urgent, there's no external deadline or something that's pressing you that forces you to have a deadline, you have to schedule. You have to intentionally block out time for it. If it's not important but it's urgent, the recommendation is to delegate. So who do it for you? And if it's not urgent, not important, don't freaking do it. I spent a little bit more time talking about kind of work my way through. But Gene, any questions on that? Have you ever seen the Eisenhower box before? Okay.
Yes.
So on the not urgent, not important, it's my observation that some people burn a fair amount of time in this category, time and energy, because they let themselves be too interrupt driven and are not intentional or thoughtful about how they're allocating their time. Some of that interrupt driven might be if people call you up or you're checking your emails every 5 minutes or your Facebook group. If you don't plan that, and you could even argue that some of that is reasonably important, but then other times people might be reaching out to you and calling you, emailing you, contacting you, and it's important to them and maybe even urgent, but it's neither important or urgent for you. So one of the things that at least some of my clients struggle with a little bit is structuring things so that they at least block out a specific day and time and tell people, okay, if you need to call me and talk to me about something, here's the time that I have available. And then I sometimes even shut down my cell phone, or at least have it sitting in another room. So, but I definitely don't just reach over and pick up my cell phone if I hear it ringing. In the not urgent but important, where it's really a thing to be thoughtful and about your scheduling, your time blocking. So next week, I'm going to do a deep dive into the whole subject of calendar time blocking, but real quick, I'm going to share my screen here, full screen, and then let me run through this over. This is my daily calendar, and this is how I make sure that I've covered things. Actually, in at least these top two boxes, obviously if it's something I delegate, then I'll probably have at least a task to follow up on it. But for things that are important and urgent, I've given it a deadline by putting it in my calendar. And I'm following the principle of, what is for a particular thing, goal I want to get accomplished, what's the very next action I need to take to make progress. So some of the examples of that would be, and you'll see I have content development and connecting pretty regularly. And let me flip over to this next week, kind of as a starting point for the week. Those two things are important, but not urgent, i.e. there's no external thing that's forcing me or driving me to do those things. But I've identified that though for my coaching business, those are two of the highest priority things I need to focus on. So I block out time every day to do some kind of content development, whether it's a blog post, a recording, working on, those are the two main things I'm doing right now is blog posts and recordings for the YouTube channel. I also periodically do like free gifts, lead magnets, but every day, at least an hour on content development. And then the other thing, this one here, connecting, that's just reaching out to folks, either like on Facebook, LinkedIn, some of the Facebook groups I'm in, responding to the business related emails, following up with people that might have asked me for something, developing campaigns. For example, I need to crank up kind of promoting the workshops, start getting the word out a little bit more. So Gina, you won't have to feel obligated to show up every time to support me all by yourself. And I also think that it's gonna make it even more interesting when I grow the audience over time. So I have a reasonable number of participants on the live call, but just doing this every Sunday and recording it, that's helping me get more and more useful content. And like I said, next week I'm going to do a deeper dive into the whole subject of calendar time blocking, kind of walk you through at least how I do it in more detail. So let me see about the other box. Yeah, so let me go back to this not urgent. That's really not urgent, not important. That really goes back to, what is important to you? What are your values? I mean, for some people, maybe watching the 6 o'clock, it's definitely not, and I find it to be an actual downer. So there's a whole raft of things that over time I've just eliminated. Just like in the important and urgent, it goes back to, and you have to decide for yourself, what is important. Now, when I'm coaching business clients, based on my experience, I can share with them in general, here are some things I think are really important for you to do on an ongoing basis for your business. For example, the two I just talked about, content development and connecting, I'm very confident that those are highly important things that anyone who's working on a business, especially an online, would really need to work on. So I'd say for almost all of my clients, this is important. But then how they fill out the rest of their calendar is really dependent on what their particular business goals are, what they're trying to flip back. What their quarterly goals are, what their annual goals are, and then based on their quarterly goals, one of the things you almost always need to do to really get down to a granular level for prioritization is break your highest priority quarterly goals down into, in other words, task it out, which is, again, one of the core skills I picked up as a project manager, which is I've got this really huge chunk of work. Some people call it the big rock. You have to break that big rock up and break it down into discrete, manageable, and then prioritize. Many of those things are going to fall into, or probably most of those things are going to fall into the important but not. That's probably one of the most challenging areas to manage effectively. And I've had many clients tell me, yeah, I can't really get to the important stuff because I've got all this urgent stuff I have to get done. I'm just driven to and fro by things I have to get done. They're urgent, but they're not truly significantly important. I feel like I have to get them done, but they're not really going to move the needle on my business. You really have to carve out the time for the important but not urgent stuff. Because if you don't, you're never going to get to it, right? You're not going to advance your business or your goal or your career the way you really want to, because all of your time and energy is consumed with the not important. All right, so I'm going to check my notes here. Gina, any questions on that? I mean, I think we've talked about this at least somewhat in
Yeah, no,
daily.
I understand. I like the way you're putting it though. It is making a lot of sense to me.
Okay, good. So I think I've covered. Oh, probably one more thing I wanted to get to, or actually two more things. So, once you break up your goals, how do you manage those? So, there a lot of people go with to-do lists, and there's pros and cons of to-do lists. I've had clients where they had some software like Todoist, or there's half a dozen other types of software out there for managing to-do lists where they have huge long to-do lists in lots of different categories, health, business development, personal relationships, work, and then kind of try to prioritize those within each of those many different groups. Try to prioritize, okay, this is number one in this group, and this is number two, and this is number three. But then they have a really hard time integrating that into their actual daily life. I played around. I mean, obviously over the years I've worked with to-do lists in lots of different ways, shapes, and forms, and project management tools and Gantt charts and things like that. But when I'm not running a project team, for me, there's a more straightforward do. So I've let go of keeping these really long, elaborate to-do lists because one, I've found it can be overwhelming, and two, it kind of burns your energy. If you, in the back of your mind, you have all the closed loops, I've got 43 things that I want to get accomplished related to my business, sucks your energy. And if it's, the lower priority stuff in that list, it could be rolling over for months and months and months, and it starts to become a drag. So instead, weekly calendar does present my basic here's what I want to get done this week. I mean, when I get on the morning accountability call, I typically have pretty much blocked out for the day and made my commitment. Here's what I'm planning on doing today. So you can see, like, for tomorrow's call, I haven't done that yet. I have some core stuff, but this afternoon or first thing tomorrow morning, after I get through my morning startup rituals, I will actually finish blocking that out. And then the other thing that I do in the way of kind of keeping a short running to-do list is I have this little time block here. So this represents yesterday, what I actually did. And that helps me to be very succinct and focused when I'm reporting to my accountability group. Here's what I worked on yesterday. Boom, 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 boom. And then what I'm planning on doing for today. Now, the morning startup ritual, I don't run through all the details on that, but I have the reminder for me. Here's everything I want to get done related to that, including review. Let me highlight this. So I invest about 10 to 15 minutes on this every morning. Review and update this daily to-do list and calendar. And Cal Newport, who I really respect, he's written a couple of really excellent books. One of them, he's at the top of his game and well respected as far as protein, time, and energy. He recommends, and I agree, 10 to 15 minutes every morning first thing is great investment of your time because it helps you position yourself for the day. And then I'm going to pull down real quick so you can see. All right, so if something pops into my head where, hey, this is a pretty short-term thing that I really want to get done, but I'm not going to schedule it for today, but I don't want to forget the thought, I just put it down here under momentum soon. So that way I have a little running list, and I check it every morning and say, is there anything here I want to I want to go ahead and pull into today's calendar, and if there is, then I go ahead and pull it in, take it off this list, and just drop the task into one of these boxes here. So the other thing that right now I think that's important but not urgent is working through some training that I have available to me, focused on the area of list development and field marketing. So I color-coded calendar here, those are in yellow. So that just reminds me, okay, this is some training. So that's never urgent in and of itself. If I don't show up and take it, even if it's live, there's always recordings, but if I don't show up and actually do it, study the recording, nothing happens. Nobody, nobody, I don't have a boss that calls me up and says, Steve, I see you didn't take that training today. So this one right here is an example of kind of the next big training that I'm going to start blocking out when I finish this training right here. The affiliate marketing list building is Christian Mickelson's Rapid Results Coaching. It's a bonus program. I'm going to get his coaching certification just like I got the Eben Pagan's virtual coach certification. So that's a specific example of something that occurred to me a couple of days ago. I said, all right, I don't want to lose sight of that. I'm going to go ahead and jot that down. I don't find having a list or multiple to-do lists to be that effective. And I also, lots of little stickets and stickers, post-it notes, multiple different paper lists to do, for me, is useful. I stick with the calendar and this little short-term daily to-do list. Okay. The only other thought I want to cover real quick, and it goes to it definitely goes to not important, which is the concept of multitasking. So I've had clients that kind of, I don't know, say they justify or rationalize, being completely event driven and not necessarily being as intentional as they could be about the important stuff. In their mind, it's like, oh, I'm multitasking. I'm getting a bunch of shit done. But at the end of the day, they haven't necessarily accomplished anything. So just going to flip over real quick. I'm not going to spend a whole lot more time talking about it, but I want to go to, so I did write a blog post on that, the myth of multitasking and why the concept of multitasking is basically bullshit. Because when I'm working with folks trying to hone their prioritization, at least some people it comes up as, oh, multitasking is a good thing and I'm doing it and it's effective. It's really not. You can only do one thing at a time. You may be switching from one thing to another thing in very, very short bursts, but the human brain can actually only focus on, in their conscious mind, one thing at a time. I'll put the link to this blog post down when I post the video, for anybody that wants to take kind of a deeper dive into it. And I'll also post the link to last week's call, the first one, mini workshop, which was on the general subject of accountability and what it means and why it's important and how potentially you might benefit from putting together or getting in a daily or weekly accountability group. And I'll put the link to that down also when I post the video. But I mentioned it on today's call because prioritization is kind of a follow-up to that whole subject, because whether you're holding yourself accountable or you're having other people supporting you and being accountable, you have to know what it is that you're accountable for. You can't it's not effective to just get up in the morning and say, okay, I got a business and I'm going to do business stuff, right? You have to be able to say, here's what I worked on yesterday and here's what I'm working for today. You can't really say first thing in the morning to a reasonable level of the high priority things that I'm going to focus on for today. Then good news, you have significant opportunity for improvement. So, thanks, Gina, for joining me, and thank everyone that's watching this video. So,
Yep.
Gina, any other thoughts, questions, discussion?
No, I really do like the idea of looking at things that are important, not urgent, and then making them a priority to schedule. I hadn't really thought about that before.
Cool.
And so just like you, content development and connecting are two things that I need to do.
Yep.
And at the moment, I'm pretty good at connecting every day, but I'm not as good at content development
Yeah.
every day. I was thinking rather than doing content development every day, having a couple of content development days.
Right.
And then I spend that day or several hours of that day working on content. I think that that would work for me better.
So that's, for some
Yeah.
people, that's probably, I won't necessarily say better, but an effective way to do it. I think the challenge, or the challenge I would face if I do that, is I would just get burned out. Right. I mean, I like to break it up in smaller chunks. Even if I end up on a given day, I have like three different 1 hour blocks. I don't have them, have content development. I don't have them back to back to back, because I start losing, a certain amount of focus and concentration. And that I would put most of the content development work I do in the category of deep work, to use Cal Newport's term, and that's high energy for me. So, we can talk about more in our daily accountability group.
Yeah, what I noticed what I noticed for me is 3 hours is a good block for me.
Yeah, yeah,
So basically, I block out 3 hours for creative work,
yeah,
and I like that better than the hour or the hour and a half.
yep.
And then if you block out 3 hours and you get burned out after an hour and a half, you can just stop,
That's true. Yeah.
right? And do something else.
All right. Well, Gina, you have a great rest of your day, and I'm going to stop the
Okay.
recording
You
here.
too.
All righty. Coolio.
So is the recording stopped?
Yep.
Is the recording stopped?
Yep.